This is an extremely controversial topic, and the idea of addressing climate-linked migration through more security measures is really the kind of hot topic within this field. And many governments' approach to thinking about migration and displacement is already essentially a securitized approach. It's not an approach that I advocate or that we advocate as an organization, but we do need to examine it because regardless of what we think of it, increasing security measures and militarizing borders is how most governments right now are thinking about how they deal with cross-border migration or irregular cross-border migration. And my experience is that when you engage with governments, when you engage with states about how they might address climate-linked migration, the first thing that they think, the first sort of suggestion that they have is essentially a securitized one. Their response, well, the response from wealthy developed countries, the response from most European Union countries is, well, this is a security issue and we will address it in the way that we address other security issues. And by that, they essentially mean the increasing militarization of borders, and they mean intervening in the countries that people are coming from in order to try and prevent them leaving those countries in the first place. This is essentially how European countries have responded to the migration and refugee situation in the Mediterranean. They have scaled back the funding that is available for rescue. They have simultaneously increased the funding that is available for patrolling and intercepting refugee boats in the Mediterranean. They have invested heavily in countries in North Africa, in Libya, in Morocco, to try and create migrant and refugee processing and holding centers in those countries to prevent people from actually embarking on the final part of their journey across the Mediterranean. So this is a kind of an expensive and security/military driven response. And many countries will look to this formula or this way of dealing with migration that they're using now as a way of dealing with future climate-linked migration. Now, this, I think, is a mistake. I think countries, in doing so, are actually creating the crisis that they so fear. When we look at what's happened in the Mediterranean, actually, it's the fact that people have to make that journey in secret, that they have to try and enter the European Union under cover of darkness or at a piece of deserted shoreline or to be rescued, that is driving them to make that movement in a dangerous way. If there were options for them to migrate into the European Union safely and legally, they would of course use those rather than trying to cross the Med in a dangerous boat or to enter via the Balkans, sneaking across borders. So it's actually a securitized response to migration that creates what we usually think of as a migration crisis. Like when we see news footage of people in rubber boats, when we see the news footage of people trying to climb fences, essentially what's happening there is those people are trying to cross a militarized border. If you create a safe, legal way for them to enter a country, either on a legal working visa, or you make it clear that they will have their application for refugee status assessed fairly when they arrive, and you give them a way of arriving safely, of course people will do that rather than trying to enter a country in a clandestine or dangerous way. So the reason that I'm highlighting this here as a potential policy response to climate-linked migration is firstly because I think it's extremely problematic, but secondly because it is how most states are thinking about how they respond to this issue in the future.